We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Thursday, and we have another guest today. We're getting a lot of guests these days, and I'm glad of it. I think they make the show more interesting. And this one will be particularly interesting. This gentleman's been on the show before one time, and he's back. His name is Abe Gurko. And Abe, I first saw him on TikTok. He's got a TikTok called Won't Be Silent. And he's very successful on TikTok with it. People love this guy. I love watching his stuff because I get a lot of information from it. You're one of the few, if one of maybe one or two actual creators on TikTok that I know. A lot of people think everybody that's on TikTok that has some followers, they know each other. Nobody else talks to me. Abe talks to me, so thank God for that. But Abe, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be back in the saddle, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We need to tell people who you are. Go ahead. We got a little delay in the thing, so.
All right. Okay. My name's Abe. My handle is Won't Be Silent. It's based on a project that I started around the time the Nazis were marching in Charlottesville, just to bring up a cheery moment in American history. But it's a film project that's in development, and it's about a piece of music that is a call to action. It was written in a concentration camp as a song of resistance to the Nazis, and it was lost for 75 years. And I was presented with this opportunity, and I've been taking it forward. And when COVID happened, we were shut down. We'd been filming for about a year or so. And when we were in lockdown, I thought, well, what better way to say I won't be silent than by voting? So I developed the platform. That's what brought us together. It's the moment where I thought 2020 was a big success because we got, who out of the White House, but now we're called to action even more so. And the only way we're going to do this is by speaking up and galvanizing people and getting the Democrats who may not have historically voted these last two elections to understand that the stakes are for them. It's not necessary. I mean, my whole thing is let's focus on the people over 30, you know what I mean?
Right.
So we can win this thing,
Now, I want to talk about your life because your life, my life is pretty scattered and eclectic too. I've been involved in a lot of things, but you even more so. And I got a taste of it. You'll see, those of you watching the podcast, you'll see the book behind him. It says Won't Be Silent. And in fact, Abe has a book. I don't typically promote books, but I had occasion to listen to this book, and it was very entertaining, very inspiring, very informational. I had a good time listening to it. I like biographies, and that's basically what this is of yours. And your life, I mean, you've been in the entertainment business for the most part, but you went off on other tangents too with your family and the car parts business and all that stuff. You've gone through a lot of different fucking changes over your time.
I feel like I'm like a cat, and I just hope that this isn't my ninth life. You know what I mean? I would like to think I'm at number 6. You know what I mean?
Do you think of yourself as an actor?
It's been a ride for sure.
If you were to pick one thing to say that you are you an actor, or are you a producer, or what would you say you are?
I mean, now it's official. I'm a writer producer. I mean, finishing and writing the book is such a number to get check off the bucket list. But I've been producing stuff for years, so it's writer producer now because I've earned it. It's amazing to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was interesting reading your book, and I didn't read it. I listened to the audiobook, and Abe did the narration on it and did a great job. It was interesting to hear about your family, the diversity in your family. I think everybody has stories about family. Let me ask you this. Some people say to me, and I'm sure they say this to you, you tell great stories about your life and all that stuff. And I'm sure they say that to you. I'll say it to you if nobody else. But my contention is everybody's got great stories. It's not until you recognize those stories and formulate them in a story form and tell them that they become great stories. I think everybody has that opportunity if they would acknowledge the stories they have in their life. That's why it's so interesting to me with biographies and talking to people like you. I'm intrigued by backgrounds and experiences and all that shit.
So I personally think everyone earns the right to say that their life is worthy of story to
Right,
tell,
right.
whether it's in the writing or just orating. And I think you have to at least feel like you've grown through enough of your personal trauma, pretty much, to
Right.
be able to feel like that's to somebody can benefit from the story. The things that I'm getting so much of, I never expected this, are people direct messaging me and emailing me and saying how much, even though we're so different, because a lot of my stories are just like one of a kind, but they still feel like they're learning something about themselves through it. And that is like, that has been like such a blessing. Like this 19-year-old kid from like Europe, we randomly got the book through Book Talk. I had done a post on it, and he said, I don't even know why I would have picked this book up, but I feel like I've learned so much about the importance of family. I mean, things that I didn't even like set out as like a message, you know what I mean? So I think we all have lives that are collective in terms of what we go through. And I think, yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm blessed.
And I think one of the things you've mastered and I've tried to master too is, in our lifetimes we go through trauma, we go through difficult times, and there are people that will take those times and suffer them for the rest of their life. And there are other people like you or me or other people that are listening that take those as experiences, learn from them, and maybe get stronger from them. And I think that's the difference. I think that's why, people suffering through all kinds of trauma and anxiety and such, at some point you've got to say, I'm going to let that go, but I'm going to relish the fact that I went through it. It was tough, but the important thing is I made it through.
Yeah, that's why we're here. We're here to learn about ourselves, about others. I think I feel like a thing with the people and parents, let's say, I always feel like, because I don't have parents and I lost my dad young, and like my grandparents were all wiped out in the war. I always feel like people who don't appreciate their family, you're missing out. You're spending time holding on to resentments and anger and anxiety, where the sooner you can get through, that's one of the lessons in the book, I hope it was for me anyway, is the forgiveness is the most important thing. It's the characteristic of our as humans, that we have this opportunity to forgive. It's just a matter of when, and the sooner you can do it, it's only going to be better for you. It's
I, I've,
really an
I've,
important thing.
I've tried to tell my kids and other people this, the most important ingredient for having a less stressful life and less anxious life is to be able to truly say, I don't fucking care. Fuck it. Just let things go.
You want to know something?
What's that?
A friend of mine just wrote a book. It's called The Shut the Fuck Method. Can you see that? And
I
it's
do.
it just came out this week. So his whole philosophy is kind of like that. It's the same kind of thing. Something bothering you, you want to, just shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? It's really hilarious. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a responsibility to kind of do that, whatever is going to make you feel like you're getting on the other side of whatever situation
Right.
might be causing anxiety or grief.
Well, I want to encourage. Well, I wanted to say one other thing about the book. You said people pick certain things out and they're intrigued by it. And there's a point where you talked about, when you were late teens, early 20s or something, where you hung out at the very famous Studio 54. Now, I got to tell you, Abe, You got into Studio 54. Me looking the way I do, they would have said, nah, man, stay behind the rope. I wouldn't have got in. But I found it intriguing because that was kind of an iconic spot at the time when I was in my late teens. We heard about it, we saw about it. I've since watched documentaries of it. And you were part of a group that they knew as the Club Kids. Now, from a Midwestern white guy sitting here in Minnesota seeing these club kids, my first thought in that era in the 70s was these are some freaky motherfuckers. And but but what's interesting is like the hippies, they became kind of iconic of that era, the club kids. And you were one of them. I find that intriguing. If you told me you were a hippie in the 60s, I'd be just as intrigued. But being a club kid in the 70s, that had to be a little crazy.
Oh, yeah, it was very crazy. And just for the double whammy, because I was a little too young to be a hippie, and my sister was. So I kind of tried to be a hippie. I kind of looked like one, and I kind of well, ultimately, I've still never really joined corporate America. So I've still maintained a little bit of that hippiness. But when the club kid thing started, it's not like I even set out for it. My sister was the one that wanted to go to Studio 54 because she read about it in page 6 in the New York Post. She goes, "You're coming with me." So you would walk into this, and she was beautiful, which is why we got swung right in there. But I mean, she is beautiful, just in case she watches. But we got swung in there, and it was almost like Alice in Wonderland. I can't explain the everywhere you look, there was something like that you've never seen before. Because I was just a kid living in New Jersey at the time,
Right, right.
So yeah, it was definitely iconic, and that's when the whole fashion industry started. I mean, America was wild in the 70s, and New York especially. I mean, that was the summer of Sam, that crazy murderer that was going around, and the garbage was all over the streets. I mean, New York was out of control. Yet there was this excitement in the streets, like Times Square was gritty and horrible and so much fun to walk through, like any time of day. Yeah, people don't emulate that like culturally now because it wasn't cool.
Right.
But cool gets boring after a while. Cool's exhausting. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna say.
Well, and it kept going in New York. You had disco, you had the whole Studio 55 4 era. And then after that you had rap coming in and punk rock music. It was crazy in New York. I mean, it was crazy in Minnesota, but nothing like New York. Now, I'll be honest with you, Abe, we could probably talk about this book for the full hour, but then
No, let's
nobody
move on to what you want to talk about, which
but
is
then
we have.
nobody would have a reason not to buy the book, and I want to encourage people to buy the book. So why don't
Thank
you tell us how they do that?
It's simple. Go to Amazon and Won't Be Silent, and there it is. I mean, you can go to my website if you'd like, but that's an extra step. So I just say go to Amazon and search Won't Be Silent or my name, either one, and it's the first scene that comes up.
And I'll tell you, I try not to tell you folks any lies when I do what I do, and not intentionally anyway. But I will tell you the book is good. I
So
enjoyed listening to it. Abe does a great
thank
job with the
you.
narration, or if you prefer to read, I'm sure it's just as good there. But it's an interesting read, and I would recommend that you buy it. I'll wait until you buy it. No, I'm kidding. Um, you know,
No, and if anyone does buy it, please email me because I love this kind of communication and this community that is starting kind of by accident, that people are just connecting. So by all means, feel free to find me.
well, and, I think that's where you and I have common ground is that, when it comes to like doing the podcast or interactions, the people interacting with me, as with your case, I think is important. It adds to the whole presentation. It makes it more important. It makes it more inclusive. And there are so many very smart people out there, listeners that come on or the emails I get. Um, all it does is improve the presentation. So I'm all for it. And I can understand why you're in that position too.
And it's also a quality of life. in general, just to be able to build a community.
Right.
We're so fractured in so many ways at the moment, as you know, that if you can just, look, it's that simple thing. If you could do one thing for one person, then you're serving purpose, right?
Right.
So a lot of people are very freaked out right now. And I'm sure a lot of people come to you because you are so rational and you make people feel like its world is not ending. I I need to just sometimes watch you because I lose it too. There's just a lot of anxiety in the world, but you represent a place where people can at least feel that there is hope,
Hope.
and that's critical,
Yeah, it
right?
is absolutely critical. It's ironic that, you and I probably came around the same time on TikTok, intending to do the very same thing, inform people about what's going on and speak out. You might even say you and I are kind of current times activists. You can be Abby
Mhm.
Hoffman and I'll be a Black Panther or something. I don't know what the fuck I'll be, but you make a good
No,
point.
we are activists. It's just that we're older, so we can't get too active in the activism.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Not
it's,
everybody
it's
takes us
verbal
as
activations, whatever,
right, right. Because if I got to get up and move around and carry a sign, I'm going to get tired as a motherfucker pretty quickly. But you pointed out that you have a different presentation than I do. You're telling a lot of the same things, but you are more emotionally tied to what is going on, and it affects you emotionally, and you project that when you do the TikToks and such. Um,
I hope it's not annoying, but I
no, no,
just
no, 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 no. It's not. You wouldn't have as many followers if you did as you do if you
right,
were
right.
annoying. You and I come from different ends of the spectrum, but I think I think people feel your compassion, and I hope they do with me too. But I'm not emotional about this because I'm just thinking business. It's not that I'm not emotional. It's just that when I got a problem, I'm just focused, and that's what I deal on. But that compassion is absolutely necessary. Isn't that something that we're missing in this country right now? Compassion.
Yeah, and humility and humanity. I mean, the word humanity, not even just in regards to what happened after October 7th, but for the past year, the word humanity I have felt has been slipping in our actual discourse.
Right.
And again, this is even before this is that situation. This this kind of propelled it into like a nightmare. But I just think that we're also settled into this fight for who's right, that you lose compassion for other people. And I have to feel like when you're raised by parents who survived the Holocaust, you have automatic, you've got a built-in capacity to have compassion for others because
Right.
you understand that they've lived lives that you could never imagine. And yeah, that's why I get a little more emotional about the situation that's going on now. But again, I don't want to alienate a lot of the people that are part of my community because I'm here for the bigger reason for democracy, and hope that that can be something that I can say again, like we did in 2020, have a bit of responsibility to keeping it alive. I think that's going to be really important. We'll see how it shakes out. It's definitely scary times, so you guys,
It,
whatever.
it is a little scary. I mean, especially I'm a big dumb white guy. I'm fine because they love big dumb white guys, right? But they're doing everything they can to marginalize all the more minority groups. I read something today, and I'm not telling any information out of school here. Abe is part of the LGBTQ community, and there was a story. I think it was Oklahoma. I'm not sure, but some representative or legislator or something wrote that it called LGBTQ people groomers and something else. I can't remember what it was, but it was derogatory. After all that
Right.
that community has gone through since the 60s, because basically in the 60s, it was illegal to be gay. Um, to where we are now, it's got to be troubling to see that come back and that hate and that anger about people just wanting to live their lives.
I mean, that is part of this whole thing about humanity that I feel we're sort of slipping. So, of course, I mean, if you want, you want to take my rights back, by all means, here, end it. No, I just think that, we fought so hard for our rights that I can understand why the women and gays right now are at this kind of, they're on tenterhooks about the future. And I think that what I don't see is the coming together of those two communities. I don't see the enough of the women's movement that was there in 2017 at the march after
Right.
Trump won. I don't see that energy. And that to me is totally unacceptable. I mean, I'm not going, that was pre, warriors, like keyboard warriors. That was like, that was the people, we were all out in the streets for that. And I don't see that. And I don't see the possibility of coming back together with that, because we have now this other war thing happening where the young people who would be the first to fight for women's rights and the men who are in their lives to do that with them, the student bodies, they're not available for this. And this is my biggest concern about the women's movement, in terms of, will they be able to get the House, the Senate, and the presidency so that they could get Roe v. Wade put back in. Very concerned about that. You know
Yeah.
what? As for me and gay rights, I don't see that turn. If that's their priority, if this is what the Christian nationalists, if they get into power, if this is the first thing on their agenda, it's like the thing that has helped me this past few months is that I've looked at everything in this other way. I look at everybody as, you're embarrassing.
Oh, absolutely.
When you
Absolutely.
when you look at somebody, that when you call somebody embarrassing, it automatically puts them on like a defensive position, and you have to feel sorry for them because they're embarrassing. And if that's with their first priority, that's embarrassing. So
Well,
I don't see that happen. I'm more concerned about women right now,
yeah.
and will the women in
I,
America
I
right now.
said in a TikTok recently, I said, look, I'm 64 and you're roughly around my age. Um, at 64, regardless of who becomes president or what rules they change about abortion, about whatever, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't, I don't have to worry about abortion for me. I don't have to worry about contraception for me. But I do have kids and grandchildren. And even if you don't have kids and grandchildren, we as Americans in this country, anytime any party, it could be Democrat or Republican, says we're going to take away from some of your rights. It's never happened before. That should be a red flag. We should be nervous. We should be scared, and we should be ready to fight.
It's just the fervor that the media is refusing to back off on supporting, just giving Trump and that whole ideology so much coverage.
Yeah.
It's just embarrassing. But I mean, I feel sorry for the people on MSNBC. They are not allowed to talk about anything else.
Right.
These are nothing else. And all the and it's almost like I can barely watch it anymore, because it's the same six people trouncing around the station all day. It's like they
Right.
have like change of clothes ready to go on the next show. It's just not interesting. I'd rather hear it from you than from friggin',
Yeah.
Joy Reid.
Yeah.
I'm not interested anymore.
Right. Exactly. Well, the thing that I think
And they're not going to give me the same information that you're going to give me, by the
yeah,
way. They're
exactly.
not going to. They're not going to explain the way you could explain rationally because they have to be sensationalized and all hysterical in order to get viewers.
The show must go on. We must get viewers. We must make money, and that's the first and foremost goal of any media outlet. I don't care who they are or what they claim. But I think the one thing that the Republicans have been the most successful with in their strategy to take over or to wreck our country or wreck democracy, they've been helped along, like you pointed out, is dividing this country. Now, the Republicans want to divide the country. They talk like they want to divide the country, but the media is truly the culprit here. And the reason I say that is because I'll sit and talk to Trumplafuck sometime and I'll give them a point and they'll go, I never heard that. And that's the problem. Depending on what outlet you listen to, you get a different story or things are omitted. I can talk to a Trumplafuck and we can't talk on the same level because we don't know all the same things. I mean, I try to know as much and everything as I can, but he doesn't or she doesn't. She wants to hear what she wants to hear. And as far as they're concerned, it's the truth. I told this story on the podcast recently. I was talking to a guy who had trouble with a Trumplafuck, and the Trumplafuck told him the reason I won't vote for Joe Biden is because Joe Biden wants to take away our Social Security and Medicare. How the fuck do you get that? It's crazy.
Wow. That from Fox or OAN? Did you
Apparently,
ask them?
yeah, it has to be. It has to be. But that's where the division
Yeah,
comes.
the misinformation. I mean, you know what? It's like I don't like the country we're living in, based on in misinformation, so readily just spewed around, and it's forgiven. It's not even like there's no recourse, there's no accountability, there's no. I mean, why anybody feels that they have a fair shot, unless you're a part of the absolute elite few. I mean, I don't know. I'm so disappointed in the way we have evolved as a culture, as a society, I mean, when we go back and look at the 70s, I mean, the 70s, it was all about hope because we knew that you couldn't keep that going. But, you know, the evolution of changing up. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this.
I'm
Is that what we're headed for, though? You talk about the 70s and there was hope and there was. The 60s were tumultuous, probably more tumultuous than what we have now in this current time.
I agree.
We came out of the 60s. We came out of it, even though it was rough. In the 70s, we started to get some hope back and some joy and some inclusivity. One might say that even though we're in that tumultuous time now, we would probably come out the other side and maybe in 5-6 years we'd start experiencing what we experienced in the 70s. At least you would hope so, because this stuff can't last forever. We see the Republicans going down the shitter right now. They're flailing and they're loud and they're angry but it's because they're going down. There's really no hope for them. But I'm hoping, and I really feel like we'll see something similar from 60s to the 70s in this era to whatever's ahead of us. It's got to get better.
Yeah, I mean, my question is, could we possibly even even worst case scenario happens, right? That's where we the people rise up. Like,
right.
As much as we might keyboard warrior our way through this whole process back in 2020, again, I think when we push come to shove, the people do come together. I just think we've been lulled into this kind of false sense of reality because so much of our lives are through social media and through, you know, the immediate gratification of that. But like, if we started losing our Social Security, girl, believe me, I will be like running down the streets. You know what I mean? Like, don't, you know, it's like, just to quote Joan Crawford in Mommy Dearest, don't fuck with me, fellas. You know what I mean? Like, that is like, once you go too far, I think the people will rise up. They did in the 1700s, they do in the 1800s. I mean, it has to be that.
Yeah, you almost have to go through those trials and tribulations to get out to a better end. I was curious because you're kind more emotional and compassionate about this stuff. We had the trial, and I haven't talked to you since the trial.
Right.
Everybody going into that trial had the same thing. They were coming to me, oh, he's going to get off. He's going to run the table. He's going to get 34 not guilties. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. He's going to be found guilty. I was surprised when it was all 34, but I sat and loved watching R.E. Melber tick it off one by one. I heard the first five and I said, good, we're okay. Well, at least we got five convictions. That's all we need. And then he kept going. What was your thoughts going into that trial and waiting for that verdict? And then what were your thoughts after you heard the verdict as somebody who worries?
I, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think that he's going to be. I can sometimes be a bit of a conspiracy theorist. I think it's no coincidence that all these cases are getting pushed off, and that this one is being galvanized by the Republican Party to kind of make it look like it's there's no there.
Yeah.
I think, and this whole kind of backlash of Merrick Garland, they're trying to make it look like he's weaponizing. I think Merrick Garland is complicit in the whole thing. I think that, I just think the Republicans are not to be trusted. I guess I just
Yeah.
think that it's too weird. I knew that it was going to be like he's not going to prison. We knew he wasn't going to prison.
Do you still
Would
think
I
that?
like for him to go to prison?
Do you still think
I
he's
don't
not
think
going to get jail time?
I don't think he's not getting jail time. And I
Well,
think he will if he loses the election. Like, let me take that back.
yeah.
If he loses the election, all those other cases come to bear fruit, and then we get to have the big Yahoo and dancing in the streets.
What makes you
It's
think?
but
What makes you think he's
uh,
not going to get jail time on this particular case?
I think I think everyone's afraid of him. I do. I think his party is afraid of him. I think the judges are afraid of him. I think I wouldn't put it past the Supreme Court to be doing some behind the scenes dirty dealing. I just kind of think, as much as we know what's going on, I think that our government is so shady, and so, like, even just in the abstract, just when they found those weapons that exploded in Rafah that they blamed on Israel, but it was actually the weapons that the Hamas
Right. Right.
were keeping near the, that it was our ammunitions that we had sold to Egypt, that Egypt had done. I actually wouldn't doubt that our American military complex was like, yeah, whoever you got to sell it to, we don't, I just
Yeah.
think I'm at the trust no one stage. You know what I mean?
Well,
And that's where I am.
well, and to be honest with you, as much as some people might say it's a conspiracy theory, it's a reasonable consideration given some of the things we've seen. What we found out with Donald Trump, the one positive thing that Donald Trump did for us is he exposed a lot of corruption that we didn't know was there because it flew under the radar. And now all of a sudden it's in front of our face. But let me suggest this to you with Donald Trump and the possibility of going to jail. I certainly don't know what's going to happen when he's sentenced, but there are a lot of factors in this. People will continue to say to me, well, this isn't something where normally people go to jail for, first time offense, nonviolent. But of course, Michael Cohen was a first time offender. He was nonviolent and he was kind of tied into this whole case. He went to jail for 3 years. He was sentenced for 3 years. Alan Weisselberg, 75-year-old guy, first offender. He went to jail fucking twice. So, I don't think Judge Marchand is afraid of Donald Trump. I think he's annoyed by Donald Trump. And there are a lot of factors that come into sentencing. Is he remorseful? Does he look like he would do it again? He's violating the gag order. He violated the gag order yesterday. He also
I
defamed E.
still.
Jean Carroll yesterday. He's going to get another lawsuit. I guarantee he's going to get another lawsuit. But the point is,
Oh, I know Robbie Kaplan. She is not letting that go for
uh,
shit. Are you kidding?
you know Roberta Kaplan?
No, I mean that's like I mean, when I was living in New York, my friend, when we would go to the Hamptons, was at her home, kind of that. So I wouldn't call friend, but back then was colleague. But
Okay.
just knowing, and she was that was around the time when she had done that big famous case with Edith, the the gay marriage case. That was her case.
Right.
So yeah, she's not fooling around. She wants lawyers that want publicity. This is like the Dune boggle of
Yeah.
a publicity thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're,
absolutely.
they're knowing her friggin', in Osaka. They're hearing about her. It's like wild.
Well, I suggested this, and I don't even know if this is possible. If he's given jail time, he's going to appeal it. He won't go to jail right away. He'll probably be out while on appeal. But there's a couple of things that come into play here. First of all, he did violate the gag order 13 times. Judge Juan Marchand said he's going to reserve judgment on that. What if Judge Juan Marchand says you got 6 months, you can appeal the fuck out of it, but by the way, you violated the gag order 13 times, so I'm going to put you in jail right now for 3 days just to think about it. Because while you're waiting for this appeal, there's still going to be some rules you have to follow. Now, I don't even know if that's possible, but I'm fantasizing over here. If I was 30 years old, I'd be fantasizing about something else. I'm just fantasizing about Donald Trump going to fucking jail.
Well, the thing is that I feel that even if he does get jail time, it's something that he actually wants, because that's what happened to Hitler. And Hitler came out as like a hero from having
Right.
gone to jail.
There's
So
there's a bit of difference
that's
though.
his hero.
Donald Trump
Huh?
may
But
Donald Trump may say he likes the idea of going to jail or think that way, but there's a big difference between him and Hitler. Hitler was a young man at the time. He was kind of vital and he was kind of intent. Donald Trump's going to be 78 years old. He's not a healthy mentally or physically guy. He
yeah.
he needs his Adderall. He needs his Diet Coke. He needs his McDonald's. He needs people working for him and serving him. That ain't going to happen in jail. And you know what?
He
When he
needs
comes,
he needs his palazzo bed.
yeah. But the thing is, I think whether he's in there 2 days or 2 years, he comes out a broken man because
Right,
he's a narcissist, and this is the epitome of embarrassment. This is something he
right.
can't divert or distract from. Um, I personally think that the convictions themselves are enough to sink everything for Donald Trump. You can see it in his face. If you've seen him talk lately, he looks troubled.
Oh, he looks horrible. He looked horrible. So here's the other thing that I find extremely excruciatingly annoying is that they've delayed now the Georgia case.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we knew he was guilty the day we heard the tape.
Right.
Like, where on earth are we living that it's the technicalities of bullshit
Yeah.
that our court, that's why I don't, our court systems go against what's best for America.
I agree with you. Our judicial system is broken, and that's something that needs to be fixed. And we can't do that until Republicans are eradicated from this thing. But let me ask you this: people, I'm a glass
From
half full.
earth.
I'm a glass half full guy, right? I'm the one that always comes out with the positive thing. I think the Manhattan district case is enough to sink Donald Trump. 34 convictions, whether we have 44, 54, 64, doesn't really change much at this point. But with 34 convictions, and Donald Trump wants to push these out past the election because this delusional fuck thinks he's going to win the election. I'm going to tell you right now, and you can put this in the bank if you want to. He's not going to win. He's probably going to get destroyed in a landslide, regardless of what anybody else says. But let's say he doesn't win the election, which I'm certain he won't. Now he's got three cases, three serious ass cases. He can delay them for a while, but eventually they're going to come. And now Donald Trump is got no protection. He's more vulnerable than he ever was. If he's not running for president, he's not the president. He's got destroyed in the election. He's got the Republican Party's basically kicking him to the curb. It's going to be lonely old Donald Trump going head to head with three serious cases. It's going to crush him if this one doesn't already crush him before the election. So I don't care if it comes after the election, as long as we got some convictions now. The other ones can
Right,
come after the election because that will just finish him.
right. I mean, I think that he is just loving all this attention, which is
Yeah.
what got him in the White House in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's the worst part of this whole thing. But I don't think that, I mean, I don't know how he's gonna like survive it just health wise. I mean, that guy
No.
does not look or seem healthy whatsoever. You can in his eyes, there's like this, there's an illness there, you know.
He's got these
But
beady little eyes, the big ass eyebrows, and the askew hair. He does not look good. He's not as
no.
conscious about his
You know,
personal
the
looks
problem
anymore.
is the problem is that we're dealing with people who have been turned. You know, it's like Manson.
Yeah.
And in the same way they went off and unalived, you know, Sharon Tate and the housemates up in Hollywood,
Right.
that his people will do that too. Now, like, am I predicting that that's going to happen when he loses, whatever? You know, I just want to bring in one other sad thing. Because of a war that's going on now, a lot of people in my community are supporting Donald Trump because they think he's going to somehow save Israel, which is like, okay, not going to happen. But it's unfortunate because people are feeling like the Democrats have become way too far left in their ideological spectrum, and it's hard to be in the middle of a community where there's fear, you know.
Right.
Like I having parents that survived the Holocaust, I fear nothing, you
Yeah.
know. Gotta wake up pretty early in the friggin' morning to scare me for anything, as you can see by the life that I've lived.
Yeah.
I've set
Exactly.
myself there, fear nothing, you know. And the only thing you have to fear is your checking account. That's the only thing I've managed to always be afraid of, you
Yeah.
know. But even that doesn't scare me because things always work out. You know, I just am a diehard optimist. But I feel like it's unfortunate because when people get afraid, it's when they make bad choices. And that's what makes me feel like nervous.
But don't you think the 2020 election was fueled by fear? It wasn't that Joe Biden was the great candidate. It was they feared Donald Trump coming in. It'd be one thing if you had one guy that was not great and the other guy that was kind of bad, but you've got fucking Satan over there. It's not like there's any gray area here. It's pretty clear he's been convicted. He's tried to
Yeah, it's the
overthrow the
same old
country.
Saints coming back for a redo. But
Right.
here's the thing, and here's where my concern is. And I'm happy to just come to your page and feel better. You know what I mean? Like I don't change that, but um, there is something about what this moment is having based on the war and the seeing these people who have allowed themselves to now be anti-Semitic, but on a level that is worse than the BLM riots, I feel, because it's not, you know, you could kind of justify the whole movement of BLM, even if you're like a white guy, like just
Right.
understanding that kind of being treated that way. Like these kids are reacting to something that has nothing to do with this country
Right.
and the people in this country. And the thing is that we win in the margins. If we're going to win this thing, we're going to win in the margins. And I think that a lot of the suburban parents who I always rely on, and on these moments in the having kids, and do you want your kid to sound like Trump? You know, like I always think that that's the sanity, that those people are going to be the ones to save the suburban moms, the soccer moms. But the thing is, these kids are acting really nuts. And it's almost like if they're left leaning, I don't want to be anywhere near that. So I'm concerned that they're picking off the margins that I'm used to thinking we're going to get.
Right.
Because again, it's going to come down to 100,000 people. We got this or we don't.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not going to be like the good old days, like with Reagan. Reagan got like 48 states. You know what I mean? That's not it anymore.
Well, I think it's going to be a wider margin than we saw in 2020, and I think people will be surprised. But that's just my speculation.
No, you stay there. You stay right where you are.
Well, I tell you
Don't
what.
let me change you.
Now, my mom, my grandparents, my family, my teachers, my bosses, and my wife have all tried to change me, and it hasn't worked. So, Abe, as formidable as you are, you ain't gonna do it. I tell you what, Abe, we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be right back. I want to talk more about the situation in Israel and Hamas because you're a man of the Jewish faith, and you have a right to speak about it. I don't. That's why I typically don't. But I want some insight as to that because that may or may not have an effect on the election. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Yeah, I have to go. Yes, me too. All right, I'll be back in 5. Yes.
All right, sounds good.
Baby, we're taking a 5-minute break, so come in and shush.
We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Abe Gurko is our guest. He's been on before. He is a TikToker known as Won't Be Silent. He has a book called Won't Be Silent. I actually listened to the audiobook. Great book. You should check it out. Go to Amazon and look for Abe Gurko and Won't Be Silent. It'll be well worth your time. It's a very interesting listen. And Abe, I noticed you talked about your worries about your checkbook. So please buy the goddamn book. Please.
Yeah.
And anyway, we were talking about the situation in Israel with Gaza, Israel and Hamas. I don't typically talk about it because I'm in a no-win situation as a dumb white guy in the Midwest. No matter what side I take or what I say, and people perceive whatever my side is, I don't try to offer my opinion because I don't have a dog in the fight and I don't know enough about it. But I know it's a big concern of yours. You're of the Jewish faith. You have a reason to talk about it. And you're concerned about how it's affecting young people in this country and their opinions as to what's going on there and those that dislike Joe Biden for what he's doing. Do they not see that Joe Biden is going above and beyond to try to mediate this thing and try to make this better? They don't get that.
They don't see that. There's 3 things happening here. The worst of it is something that you're familiar with, which is the propaganda that is the MAGA.
Right.
So the beautiful effect that propaganda has to get people into a mindset where a thing like MAGA is happening. I mean, it was different like when it was just like the teabaggers. Remember you never thought that would grow to be what that is, but it is pretty much, it's a similar kind of group. So now you have the Hamas and the Qatar money and the brains of social media prowess that have propagandized all these university students. And because it's woven into their educational system, you're not just going to get them off the teat of
Right.
that kind of hatred. So what would I like to think that at the end of the day, young women who are now marching for something that has absolutely nothing to do with them are really going to think of their vaginas first when it comes to voting for president? I'd like to think that that's going to be, that's why I like calling this idea of a one issue voter. It's not for everybody, but down ballot, everyone should just vote no matter what. But when you really are in that booth and you're looking at Trump or Biden, I mean, to throw away your vote on Dr. What's her face, I mean, these people, that's a hopeless, these people, those people are hopeless. There's millions of hopeless people in this country already.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we need to just appeal to the ones that understand what the stakes are for them. That's why I feel like people that are over 65 with Social Security, if you want to live till you're 90, 95 years old, you don't want some Republicans sweeping in there and take that away when you're like, what, you finally hit 80 and then that's drying up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like that, you have to talk about rational boomer. You have to be very rational when it comes down to why that vote matters most to who, right? So it's young women, older people, people who have to health care. I mean, what are we even talking about? See, the thing is, we can't have rational conversations with these people that are boycotting and and are protesting. If you're willing to live in a tent for someone that you have absolutely no emotional, physical, religious connection to, the religious differences between any American and far crazed Islamists, like, and don't even get me started on Queens for Palestine. You know what I mean? I will push them off the roof,
Right.
let me at them. The thing is, there's two things that's happening. It's the propaganda and it's the kind of losing touch with where are your values as an individual, as an American. Like if you're not fighting for your American rights, I don't know, I can't help you.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
I've said that before, and people said I was being mean. But I meant this. If the young people vote for Donald Trump, then you deserve what you're going to get. You should be smarter than that. You should investigate deeper. And if that's what you want for the rest of your life, I'll sit back in my rocking chair, collect my Social Security as long as I can, and try to live as happy a life as I can. But I'm going to worry about my kids and my
Right.
grandkids and all the young people. That's why they need to sit and look at what's going on. Let me ask you this. In your opinion, regarding the Hamas Israeli war, can that even be resolved? And I'll tell you why I'm asking you this. We had recently a plan that was apparently signed off by the Israelis to come to a ceasefire and maybe bring an end to this thing. But then it was shaken up and shaken off by Netanyahu. Now, Netanyahu, while the Israeli people are wonderful people, Netanyahu is a piece of shit. Netanyahu is
Totally.
basically a small miniature Donald Trump. And as I understand it, Netanyahu has a few problems with his own potential
Legal.
freedom. He has to maintain this war in order to stay in power because when the war is done, he could be on his ass and maybe going to jail. So he has no money or skin in the game to end this war. It's to his best interest to perpetuate the war. So
I know.
can they get rid of Netanyahu before the end of the war and get somebody reasonable in there, or are they stuck in this situation?
I have a feeling they're stuck. And, just FYI, my husband is Israeli
Hmm.
and um, it's just they initially they were all pro Bibi, but when the war happened, they kind of saw how so much of this was on his dime
Right.
that it was just unacceptable. So, you know, I just don't think that they're gonna, I don't think what's gonna happen is that he's gonna be ousted. You saw that woman who just won the presidency in Mexico.
Right.
Did you hear, you know, so did you know that there's like a whole big backlash against her because coincidentally, like 37 top politicians were murdered in the past like year by the so
Wow.
my sister said they got 37 of them murdered and we can't kill just one big hog.
Yeah, there's something to be said
I
about
mean,
that.
look, what does the CIA do for a living? How is this all? I don't get it. I don't get any of it. Anyway, I think we're stuck. It's like it's almost like we couldn't get Trump out of the White House before the election in 2020. Like we had to like suffer through him. I think the world has to suffer through this war until Hamas is unfortunately, although the thing is, it's just a never going to go away war
Right.
because you have the hatred for the anti-Semitism is not going. I'm part of this group that we're trying to be rational. We're trying to rationally come out with like a platform about dealing with what's going on. And I, for one, don't even want to use the word anti-Semitism anymore.
Yeah.
It's already, we're coming from a negative, we're already on the defense. Like I'm pro-Semitic, you know what I mean? So I'm going to try to make that work. You wish me luck. But just a lot of the language and a lot of the organizations, like I'm so disillusioned with all the ADLs and all these organizations and all these Holocaust museums. Like you were supposed to be there to teach people and to bring them into the folds to understand what the true genocide is and what's that a byproduct of. My parents were part of that. My
Right.
family was genocided. So I just think that I think it's just all the lip service. It's kind of like the media. It's just there to do what it is to get clickbait and money and whatever. And all these organizations who say that they're fighting the good fight. And meanwhile, here we are. And it's like my sister, who I said it was hilarious. She's like, yeah, like well, there's a tap, tap, tap. There's another an Holocaust tapping at the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's but the thing is, I believe that this too shall pass. I believe that Jews have been here time and time again historically over the centuries. And I think, the thing that's annoying, what I did a post about it today, like these young people saying, you have to divest from Israel. Excuse me, all the best innovations are currently happening out of that country. Like
Right.
nobody in their right mind, like Apple's advancements in their technologies all coming out of there. Trust me, these people wouldn't know what to do without their freaking
Right.
iPhone. You know what I mean?
Well, and that
So
and that's the thing is people want to blame all of Israel. And as I was just saying, it's not all of Israel. It's Netanyahu. That's who
yeah,
we should be
it's
pointing
his
our
government. Yes, and he can go royally fuck himself, and it's why I'm concerned that the American Jews, like they did in World War II, turned a blind eye to what was going on in Europe.
right.
And the American Jews who just it's just if I'm such a minority because of how I was raised, that my understanding and my scope for trying to live in as much as horrible things are happening. I mean, I think about my family living through the ghetto during World War II. Like they made the best, how they made the best of the most horrific situations. It becomes like something in the DNA
Right.
that I feel I have an understanding and an empathy for. I mean, I don't want to see the Palestinian people unalived like randomly like that, but they didn't, like Israel didn't start this war. And I don't want to go into a whole history lesson of that. All I'm going to say is this is my true bottom line. Zion, Mount Zion was where Jews started. That was like 3,000 years BC or something.
Right.
Christianity happened like years later in that same neck of the woods. And then the Muslims came around like in the year 610 and said, oh, okay, this is our land now. So it's like, it's not even worth fighting and who's right and who's wrong. If you're not going to be willing to live together in harmony,
Right.
then you need to get the wipe the fuck out. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Either you want to live in harmony or you need to leave the planet. These are the options.
Right. Well, the thing about it is I've said this before, and you know this, that this conflict has had flare-ups all the time since well
Mm-hmm.
before you and I were born. We're going to
100%.
we're going to get this settled, and then something else is going to happen down the road. I remember, and I don't know if I remember this properly, but when Jimmy Carter was president, he came to some peace agreement with Menachem Begin and
Right.
Anwar Sadat. And it was a beautiful thing. And they were at the table and they signed it and everybody was happy. Then a short time after that, Anwar Sadat was gunned down, So
Mm-hmm.
there's always something that's going to happen. Let me ask you this, though. If Joe Biden can help out, put pressure on Netanyahu or Hamas or whoever he's going to put pressure on and whatever he does, if we get some kind of ceasefire, if we get some kind of stoppage of the war and maybe end, at least for this moment in time, does that benefit Joe Biden? Does he benefit with all the people that dislike him now?
You want to know what would have, what should have worked and what didn't work and why we're in this place? We have how many? 6 or 8 American hostages? Why we couldn't Scooby-Doo along in there and get underground and with our big advanced $900 billion military complex budget, why we are allowing the Americans to languish there, even though I'm sure no one's alive anymore. I feel like there are Americans there. Like this is our war,
Yeah,
and we have just pawned it off on Israel.
right,
Like if they were in Me Lai, you know what I mean? We would have been in there with
right,
troops on so so he didn't want that. So that was the first mistake, just forfeiting the Americans. And because propaganda is doing such a great job, no one cares about the Americans. The only way he could the only way he could salvage the situation is if he gets those hostages out first. And then that's it, the hostages have to come out.
right,
It's not even it's a non-starter, and the Israelis should not leave until they are walking out with whatever, even just the bones of the hostages, just so that we know it's over and
right,
that Hamas admits defeat. It can't be emotionally, it can't be anything else, because if your family were held hostage, you have to imagine these are the war is based on the most horrific. I don't know. I mean, just knowing, I think when that whole thing happened, when my mom and her sister were being chosen to go either into the ghetto or to go to the train to the Auschwitz thing. My mother and her sister were like trying to make their mother seem like younger and putting makeup on her and trying to make her feel more younger so that she wouldn't go where the old people go. And she was yanked right out of their hands. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's truth. That's brutality.
right,
And as long as I know that that is what happened, then we are giving in to the Nazis.
right,
And I can't see that. And that nothing else, and that's why every one of these kids that are just like blindly supporting terrorist organization. I thought our big thing is we don't negotiate with terrorists. Yes, we do. We're doing it all day long. And the Abraham Accords people can all go roll up in a ball and fuck themselves, because I wouldn't trust that crowd for all the tea in China.
Well, if I was to have a complaint about Joe Biden, and maybe it's just my personality, Joe Biden is naturally a centrist. So he kind of
Mhm.
is in the middle, and that's fine if we were in a world where that works, but it doesn't work now. Um,
Right.
I think Joe's a little tentative in his actions. He could be
Yeah.
a little more assertive about it because we
Yeah.
are America. We have a certain amount of power. And if we went to Hamas or Netanyahu and said, listen, keep fucking around, you're going to find out. And it's not going to be
Hmm.
pleasant. He shouldn't even ever have to exercise that threat. That should be enough to get people to go, okay, he's fucking serious. But I think Joe settles for the diplomacy. And obviously, diplomacy is important first and foremost. But if that doesn't work, you got to think of something else. You got to push it a little harder.
I mean, we have American hostages there.
Yeah,
The end of this conversation.
right, right.
Anybody that doesn't agree with me, you're not America first at all.
No,
You're not America first at all. Don't talk to me about patriotism ever again. Because one thing about me, and I am Jewish and all that other stuff, but I'm clear that I'm American first right now, because I don't want to have to pick up and leave this country, which I would if we go into some fascist situation. My parents didn't survive the Holocaust, so I should go into like, part two of that bullshit. You know
right.
what I mean? It's just not going to happen.
Well, and
And it's,
the whole America First thing is a good point. It's a dog whistle for the Republicans, but that's what I've said about this Israeli Hamas war. As terrible as it is, as terrible as it is, we should vote. I mean, if our country was in perfect shape and everything was running smoothly, I'd say, okay, yeah, let's just set that aside right now. Let's deal with this situation in Israel and Hamas and Gaza and all that stuff. But we've got our democracy hanging by a thread. How can we help anybody until we help ourselves, until we're strong again? We're not strong right now because the Republicans have done everything they can to make us weak. That's their goal. I just,
mhm.
we need to
And they
focus
did a
on what we need to
fabulous
focus on.
job.
They did. They
Yeah,
did a
they
good
did it.
job.
They did it. Yeah, they always, because Democrats want 20 things for everybody to get happy, and Republicans want one thing: destroy democracy. You know what I mean? They're like, boom, and they know how to do it. They're better at it than we are. Their messaging is tight. They rally together about one message. I mean, I'm telling you, and I wanted to put out to the group this whole thing about who he's going to decide is the vice presidential pick, Trump. I feel like he has no say. I feel like it's going to come down to the Heritage Foundation
Yeah,
is going to
probably.
make a selection, because what's going to happen is they know Trump's going to usher back into the White House, and then they finally get the Sirhan thing going. And then Mike Johnson becomes the leader of the free world. And then we're all going back into like Christian camp, you know what I mean?
You,
It's
you
gonna
know,
be, it's like, you saw what I sent you today. Tell me
yeah.
that didn't scare the bejesus.
Yeah, it's a little scary. But the thing people always talk about, they said if Donald Trump gets indicted, going to be civil war. If Donald Trump goes to trial, going to be civil war. If he gets convicted, going to be civil war. Nothing has happened. He got five Trump-a-fucks in a clown car to show up. That's all he had. And now they're saying it again about if he gets
No,
sentenced
I
to prison.
agree.
It's a joke. But here's my contention. If we talk about fear, the real fear is on the left, on the vast majority of people as they look at this and they see the possibility of democracy going away and ruining our country. If there is going to be violence, I think it's going to be from the left if Donald Trump gets in office, because they will feel like they've lost everything at this point. And I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying when people think their lives are on
No,
the
no,
line,
no.
they will fight for themselves.
If Trump loses, there's going to be certain scuttles.
Yeah.
If Joe wins, there's going to be certain scuttles. If Joe loses, there's going to be scuttles. The thing is, we're at a inflection point that I don't think you and I have ever seen before. And
No.
as much as the 60s were much more like on the tenterhooks and people with, the whole world was turning upside down. It was turning upside down. This is turning down into the ground, into the darkest reasons. Because what Trump did was he allowed people to be their worst self
Right.
and in groups. See, that's the whole thing about why Hitler happened, because he played on their fears and then he made them feel empowered. And we see that that's what's happened now with MAGA, and now it's happening the same thing. When you see it on social media, I'm sure you see it during the course of a day, these people are saying evil, horrible things. Like, that's not even who raised you.
Yeah.
You can't be some suburban kid going to college and say, you're like, it's defying being raised by the kind of helicoptered parents, these kind of that just have to imagine who these are, expensive colleges that these kids that are going to sound like monsters.
You know,
It's taken it.
what I think
Yeah,
causes the most fear in this country, and this is just an observation I've made, but in the 60s, we had a lot of trials and tribulations. We had protests, we had riots, we had assassinations, we had war, we had a lot of shit. It was bad. Probably worse than we have it now. I think the difference is, at least in people's minds, in the 60s, it appeared as though that the government was still in control. Now it seems like nobody's in control. It's just all over the fucking place. It's just chaos. The Democrats want what they want, the Republicans want what they want, and they're just fighting amongst themselves. They don't have time to do anything for the country.
yeah.
And I think part of it in the 60s was the fact that we didn't have social media and the internet. There's a lot of things we didn't know. It might have been chaotic, but we didn't know it. And we felt like the president and the Congress could handle it and they would do the right thing. That's what we thought then. That's not what we think now. We don't trust presidents. We don't trust Congress. We don't trust the judicial system.
Judicial.
It's a much messier situation because we know too much
It's
more.
messy. Yeah. And the other thing is that we have a new far left. It was never like this.
No, you're right.
There was one thing. I was liberal, you were liberal, we were liberal, everybody was liberal, everybody wanted what Democrats wanted. It was like kumbaya. Freaking Bill Clinton gave us, extra money in the kitty. You know what I mean? It
Right.
was like, that was like a time. Oh, and the other thing I think that the difference is that the 60s, 70s, 80s was a very, inspiring time.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're living in a very aspirational society. Everybody
Right.
wants what this one has, and social media makes you want to see, I want that, I want this. So nobody's really inspired. Like, there's the few of us that I feel still are inspiring through our kind of well-intentioned ideas of trying to keep people together in some kind of sanity. But we're in a minority.
Yeah.
We're not the masses. We're not the ones that have, like, yeah,
Yeah.
we're just in a minority.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to hope that our minority is going to come together like it did in 2020, and we'll do the best we can. You know what I mean? I'm not giving up. I'm disillusioned. I'm disappointed. Some days I'm hurt because I know that my family has died in vain. For what?
Yeah.
To have, and it's not even Muslims, it's just this faction of Islamic lunatics. And it's kind of like, and America, as usual, kind of, we're in this mess because we're like such Pollyannas. After 9/11, we allowed all these people to come into this country who never had our best intentions, and now they have entrenched into our system, into our culture,
Right.
into our educational systems, into our banking, into our media, and there's no getting them out.
And when you say
And
we allowed people in, you're not talking about immigrants. You're talking about people in this country that infiltrated, like you say, businesses, media,
yeah,
government, and stuff. They could be just big dumb white people too. It's just that they're bad people who don't have the
right.
best
And
interest.
but all the Muslim countries sent their students here to learn and
True.
then go back. So they used the best of who we are. We are on the receiving end of what we probably could have pulled off if we kept our, nose to the grindstone.
Well, I
But
mean,
we're like this plethora of come, we're fabulous, we have education with them, and then they did,
well,
and
we
they've
all
learned
know
all our secrets.
that there was a period of time when America supported Osama bin Laden and his group of people, and then what
Yeah,
happens? Fucking comes and blows up New York. I it's it,
trust no one. So,
well, that's kind of the case, and I think I try to warn people too that I believe that Joe Biden will win. I believe that the Democrats will get the House and the Senate, but once that happens, assuming I'm right, once that happens, don't celebrate yet because we're in a deep fucking hole. We're just going to be in a position to maybe dig out of that hole. We aren't saved yet. And we can't
no
put
way.
we can't pull our hopes and dreams into Democrats either because we got some problems over there too. I've always said this
Please.
isn't about Republicans against Democrats. This is those motherfuckers against us. And for the longest time, we haven't had any power to do anything, and they've used us and they've drained us of our money and raped us of our rights. There's got to be a
Resources, yeah.
there's got to be a point where we learn a
Yeah,
lesson and go after politicians in general because we've got to set them straight and get them to understand their job.
yeah. No, I mean, yes and yes. And yes and yes. But I guess if we're going to leave on any note, is that we're going to commit to wanting the best for this country, and we're going to try to be honest. That's one thing I think I am in all of my posts, is I try to be honest. And hopefully that's going to be able to change enough votes so that we're not dealing with him in the White House again.
Don't you feel a certain amount of
Words
hope?
to it.
Don't you feel a certain amount of hope though? And I'm going to sound like I'm trying to pat myself on the back or pat you on the back.
No, you stay hopeful
I'm always hopeful.
because,
But my point is you
but
have a message
I
to give.
just, I'm less hope. I'm, yeah,
You're less
no, I'm
hopeful.
less hopeful. I'm less hopeful, but I'm more realistic to think that there's no way that motherfucker's winning. You
No.
know what I mean? But it's not because it's hopeful, it's because I can't imagine it. Like
Yeah.
I can't see it. I
I'm
don't see the 20th of January 2025. I can't see that being that.
No, I don't either. I believe in destiny, and I think the destiny is pointed in the right direction. We're going down that path. It's not like we're going to make a U-turn and say, "Oh, fuck, that destiny didn't happen. Something else happened." But
You humor me this. Let's have it. Here's the nightmare. He wins. Does Joe Biden go to the inauguration? No fucking way.
no,
He can't possibly.
no, no. I
Or is Joe going to do like, oh, I'm not going to be like him, and I'll be like,
Yeah.
Sirhan, honey. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. There's, and I, and frankly, like you said, I don't think it'll be a Democrat that would do that. I think it's probably a Republican that would. He got us what we wanted. Now we're going to take control because he's a dipshit. But
Oh,
what I was
yeah.
getting at is that you do what you do on TikTok. We're similar in many ways as far as the messaging that we send. There's got to be some
Mhm.
positivity or some hope gained by you and me just by virtue of being two old guys coming onto a kid's app and getting quite a large following. Because when I first went on TikTok, everybody goes, "Don't do that. Don't do that. You'll just embarrass yourself." And you maybe got that too. But in fact, there's a lot of us, a lot of people that
No,
think like
it's
us that
huge.
come
There's
together.
170 million of us on the thing.
Right.
Here's what I think. I think what people relate to me and you on is that we're just two honest guys that speak our mind.
Right.
And that's invaluable in a world where the media you can't trust, in a world that our judicial system is proven to be a bunch of scumbags, in a world where the entire House of the whole House of Representatives can, as far as I'm concerned, can like fold up and get the fuck out of here too. So we're what's left in this kind of dystopian weird now with this war on the streets with people wearing like it's what's the difference between the KKK and these friggin' brats?
Right. 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 Exactly. Well, I
Why are
think
you covering your face? It's no, it's that that is why we need to change the First Amendment, because if you are not showing who you are in a face and you're threatening people, that is not a First Amendment right. I'm
yeah.
sorry, leave me alone. The First Amendment needs an amendment, and that is because these kids have proven that they don't deserve to use the First Amendment to be douchebags.
I think one of the things that people appreciate in what we're doing, and again, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I think people like you and me are some of the few that truly have a First Amendment right. Because people will say to me, "You're saying exactly what I want to say," but they don't feel comfortable saying it.
Right,
They can't say it because they
right,
work for somebody or their friends or their family. And you and I just don't give a fuck. So we're saying the
right,
things they want to
right,
say.
right. Yeah, so many people say you say what I think. And if that's our role, well, so be it. It could do worse.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the one thing in doing TikToks. I didn't know where I was headed or what I was going to do or what impact I would have. But there's the two things that I appreciate the most. And when people say you said what I wanted to say and couldn't say, and you made me feel better, you talked me off the ledge. I never intended to
Right.
offer a service like that, but the fact that I do now, I'm grateful for it. It's nice to be able to do
Yeah, no,
something to
no,
do good for other people.
totally. The unfortunate thing about the fact that my views have kind of been skewed because of the sometimes I just am incensed and I speak
Right.
about the war or whatever, and because I'm getting suppressed a lot. So that's kind of like a bummer because I've worked really hard on cleaning out who follows me. So it's more of a
Yeah.
purer community. And especially now that I had the book, I was hoping to be able to think that I could kind of use the platform to kind of make that happen. But it's not, because even if I do a post about my book, it gets like 100 views. I mean, they're just suppressing it, and that's
Right.
unfortunate. But that's why I've, finding my way back over it. It's my own hilarious line. I call myself Ginger Rogers dancing in heels backward into Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but the other thing is that the other thing is, and I just want to tell anyone that's still listening to us, Substack is really becoming a cool community. So if you want to catch me at my act, it's also there that I'm building that community, and you might like it too, because you can do video there now.
Oh, can you?
So they're building channels, they have podcasts, it's a whole thing. You should check it out. But it's Abe Won't Be Silent at Substack. So if you want to kind of catch me also, because again, you never know like what my views are going to be. Like when I trash Donald Trump, I get a lot, but then again, it's like a lot of those people aren't reading.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, you know,
Whatever.
when I first started on Facebook and I was talking about Donald Trump, I wrote a lot. I like to write, but now that I've done all these videos over all this time, I've gotten to be a lazy bastard. I don't know if I could
But
sit
they're
down and write four
starting.
paragraphs.
They have it. It's check it out.
I
It's
will. I will.
building every month. They're adding layers because people are so disillusioned with the whole TikTok algorithm thing and the China and the blah and whatever. Anyway, I must go. I
No
haven't eaten
problem.
yet, but
I
this was
appreciate
great as always.
I appreciate you
We'll
taking
have
the
to
time to talk.
we have to, yeah, I needed to have a good old fashioned conversation. I've been so in my head trying to sell a book. You're like in your head trying to figure out what to do, whatever. And this is almost like I'm so sick of myself. You know what I
And
mean?
just for the folks in the audience, now Abe is going to go have dinner tonight, but he's not sure where dinner is tomorrow night. So buy the goddamn book. Go to Amazon. Buy Abe's Won't Be Silent.
Please. All right, man. You're the best. It was great. I love catching up with you. We are going to do this again soon. There's many
Absolutely.
months before November that we're going to have to cheerlead for somebody.
Absolutely. And after the election is done, we can come up with some other topic. Now there'll always be politics to talk about, but I appreciate it, Abe. Thank you very much. For
Oh,
those,
yeah. No, my pleasure.
it's always a great time talking to you.
Be well.
For those of you listening, I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you
Hope
so
you
much, everybody. Please get the book.
absolutely. Anyway, Abe just took off. I don't know where the fuck he went, but anyway, I appreciate him coming by. It's always entertaining to talk to him. He's a very smart, very eclectic guy. He's got a lot of opinions, and I like hearing them because I learn a lot from him, as I do a lot of the listeners to the show. Anyway, thank you for listening, taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.